Hello, 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 and good morning. Welcome to another episode of Culturally Coded Book Talks, where an open book teaches valuable lessons about life, liberty, and happiness. I'm your host, author J.A. Faulkerson. We have been reading my debut novel, Adinkrahene, Fear of a Black Planet, and we are really working through the book. We are close to the end because, as I state many times, this book is not a long book, but it is packed with a lot of information that kind of lay the foundation for the two additional books that will be added to this story. This book is called Adinkrahene, Fear of a Black Planet, but we have two additional books that will be written here within the next 2 years. This book two will be titled Adinkrahene, Fear of a Beloved Community, and book three will be titled Adinkrahene, Fear of an Alien Presence. So this is a sci-fi drama, whatever you want to call it, but I try to mix a lot of political elements, but I also have a tip of the hat to movies like Star Wars, Star Trek, and things like that. But and I'm centering the Black diaspora as a central character in this story. So what I want to do today is I want to read chapters 17, 18, and 19. And because we have so many chapters that we want to read, I just want to get right into it. But let me pause for 1 second. I need to do something to these shades. Got a lot of light in the background. Oh, there we go. That's much better. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. So this is chapter 17, Jonathan Frazier. What were you thinking, Mr. Black lit into me as I stepped off the A train. You were instructed to not get anywhere near her. Understood, sir, I replied, but I had to make sure she was all right. Kelly's a friend. Besides, I was geared up. No chance of them identifying me. We stepped off the landing pad and walked toward the compound entrance. That's beside the point, Jonathan, Mr. Black sighed. You know the importance of timing. They find out about us, or that you're one of us, and that's all she wrote. Kyle Schuler becomes president, and we have to put up with 4 to 8 years of his nonsense. But what about now? You saw what that robot did to me. I almost took my head off. Can these powers of ours deflect bullets, bazooka shells, and lasers? Yes, and much more. Mr. Black motioned me to one of the booths lining the curved wall. This area of the crater was a hot spot for Adinkrahene agents, as we often came here to cut up during our downtime. I used this space often to write in my journal. The view wasn't as appealing as gazing down at the Atlantic from the balcony of a luxury East Coast hotel, but at least I was able to peer out at the cavern walls, listen to the stream flowing past the island. Mr. Black sat first. I claimed a seat across from him. We're monitoring her movements. That is my tech at the base of her neck. I want it back. We both nodded at two swimsuit-clad agents, a male and a female, as they walked past us. We're sending a team up to Cape Cod to take her down alive. Maybe the only chance we have of stopping her before the Republican National Convention. Alive? She's a loose cannon, sir. The bombing at Union Station was a warning shot. If you don't think she needs to be disconnected from the grid, then she must be taken out. I will never order the outright killing of one of her own. But that's the easiest way to end this temper tantrum of hers. I shifted in my seat. I joined Adinkrahene expecting fistfights, not against white people in general, but the ones who have a hard time allowing everyone to have their piece of prosperity. The real enemy has been revealed to us. We know now that it's not white people. Like Doc and you said, it's an alien presence that has caused unenlightened whites to lose their morality. They are blinded by centuries of privilege, which causes them to look down on us rather than view us as equals. And that's why your trip to Tampa Bay is so important. The spotlight will be on Kyle Schuler. If your team can squeeze a confession out of him, that will strike at the heart of what the corporate cabal is trying to do. Getting that confession is going to be difficult as long as Selena is stoking the fire. She needs to be removed from the grid permanently. Mr. Black's head snapped to me. I can't do that, Jonathan. A noticeable pause as I looked at him bewildered. I will never order the killing of my own daughter. We both spotted Big Nate walking toward us down the back hallway. I swallowed hard as I struggled to understand what he was saying. Mr. Black continued. I know how much she means to you. She means the world to me as well, even now, when we don't see eye to eye. But I wasn't there. Her grandmother was. I just need you to bring her back to me alive. Let me try to talk some sense into her. A short sigh as Big Nate closed in on us. You already booked your flight to LA? Herbert is looking forward to sitting down with you. Yes, sir, flying over on Tuesday. He'll be there the day before. I'll tell him to reach out to you after you check into your room. Big Nate stopped in front of our booth. You all right, he asked. Heard you had a run-in with one of them combats. Bruised head, ego, I replied. But I'll live to fight another day. What's up with you? Mr. Black answered for him. Nate is heading up the Myrtle Beach bombing investigation. A bus carrying over 40 black YMCA kids and their counselors blew up on its way back to Raleigh. Iris and 2 other agents will be joining him. We suspect the Klan, but we really don't know. Mr. Black stood up and motioned Big Nate to his now empty seat. You brothers go ahead and chat, Jonathan. You brothers go ahead and chat. Jonathan, we'll talk later about that thing. I'm heading topside to tend to a few things at Holodeck. Big Nate and I then watched him walk toward a door leading to the Cradle's office and condo apartments. Nate, just put your operations plan in my box. Jonathan, I'll need yours by the end of the next week. You scared, aren't you? I said once we were alone. You can tell? Yeah. Just don't know why. They keep telling us that she is a living, breathing weapon. Big Nate looked away. Don't know if I can beat her, man. Not in a real fight. She's tough. And now that she's tasted blood, I question whether any of us will get out of this thing alive. Why wouldn't we? Look, you went 3 rounds with her on numerous occasions. You know her strengths, her weaknesses. You know how she thinks. You're better prepared than any agent here, including me. But her Taru is off the charts, bro. And that's why Mr. Black is sending 4 agents instead of 1. If you guys work together, she'll fall pretty easily. Just don't try to take her on alone. I still remember how Big Nate used to mop the floor with me during the first 3 weeks of my training. I would consistently return to my room, grimacing from the pain in my ribs, shoulder, and back. I didn't know the first thing about using my creativity to manipulate the electromagnetic forces that the slipstream device gave us command of. But night after night, I would sit Indian style on the floor to strengthen my Taru through meditation. I also used this time to practice offensive and defensive moves. Every Adinkrahene agent's condo had an oversized training room equipped with weights, treadmills, and punching dummies. I would place the punching dummy in the center of the room and pound on it with electromagnetic fists. I did this even when I was hurting from a big Nate beatdown. But the tables started to turn toward the 4th week. It was then that I integrated boxing and gymnastics into my training regimen. My reaction time improved. When I stepped on the training deck to spar with Big Nate, I tried to imagine myself as legendary boxer Muhammad Ali, but with electromagnetic fists. I remember Big Nate throwing an electromagnetic punch at me that probably would have knocked me out. I seemingly dodged it in a somewhat casual manner, which shocked the hell out of Big Nate. While I was dodging his punch, I created an electromagnetic battering ram that hit him from behind and sent him reeling toward me. I plucked his body from the air as he flew towards me and then body slammed him into the mat before pinning him. Hulk Hogan, eat your heart out. Chapter 18, Selena Giles. After about 3 weeks on the Cape, I longed to be in the city, Boston or New York perhaps. So I decided it was time for Blackout to spread out to other parts of the country to implement phase 2 of our plan. The 2012 Republican National Convention would be held at the Tampa Bay Times Forum September 1st through the 4th in Tampa Bay, Florida. I was intent on using the event to make a spectacle of Kyle Schuler's death. Live on stage, I would rip his heart from his chest minutes after he delivered what would undoubtedly be a rousing acceptance speech. I would have removed their white knight from the chessboard before he could dream of sitting behind a desk in the Oval Office. I set my sights on New York City, which was a 6-hour drive west of Oaks Bluff. I don't know what it is about New York City, but it mesmerizes and calms me. Maybe it's the Empire State Building or the theater district. I don't know. It was definitely a place where I could get lost. And that's exactly what I needed at this stage of this most dangerous of games. Trayvon, on the other hand, was headed to Marietta, Georgia, to meet up with Jim Crow criminal Harrison Forbes. He was accompanied by a team of 10 blackout agents. Forbes was only 49 years old, but Helena and her blackout intelligence unit confirmed that he was the mastermind behind some of the most heinous crimes against the area's Black and Hispanic residents. Helena's report said he personally draped the noose around Morehouse College student George McDaniel's neck from the bed of his pickup truck. He and a few of his deputies then looped the rope over an overarching branch before pulling the truck bed from under him. McDaniel managed to hold his head and neck taut for about 10 minutes, but his strength of will eventually gave out. His neck snapped as soon as he relented. The hanging occurred on February 13, 2007, 3 days after Herbert Newsom stood on the steps of Chicago's old Capitol building to announce his candidacy for the United States presidency. It didn't surprise me that Forbes just so happened to be the Cobb County sheriff. That's how members of the modern-day white supremacy groups operate, fake being upstanding members of the community so people of all racial, ethnic groups start respecting you, your decision-making, your service to the community. That way, when shit goes down, no one can call you a racist or a bigot. You can even accuse innocent residents of color of criminality or claim self-defense after riddling their bodies with bullets. If you're a white citizen, you can argue that you were standing your ground when responding to, quote, intimidating, unquote, Black people, more specifically, Black males. Unfortunately, our Black males were nothing more than moving targets for any unenlightened white person with a gun. It's probably a running joke among unenlightened members of the white majority to cast their Black males as perpetual intimidators. For this reason alone, I had no problem giving them the ultimate dose of their own medicine. It's done. That was a voicemail message Trayvon left on my iPhone. A video was attached, so I played it. It all went down in a wooded area about 25 miles south of Chattanooga, Tennessee, right off Interstate I-75, or Interstate 75. My soldiers wore black masks and gloves to protect their identities. It would have made my day if they had let the bastards see their beautiful Black faces. This was the end of the road for Harrison Forbes, who was still dressed in his sheriff's uniform. After this, his right to life would be nothing more than an afterthought. Trayvon's fist slammed into Forbes' face, sending red spittle splattering from his lips and nose. Forbes tried to sit up, attempting to buck up to his attackers, but Malcolm knocked his ass back to the ground, kicking him in his rib cage multiple times with his steel-toed boots. George McDaniel sends his regards, bitch, Trayvon explained. He then accepted the noose that team member Malcolm Green handed him, leaning in to drape it around Forbes' neck. As he was drawing back, Forrest spit in his face. Trayvon's hand instinctively went for the pistol holstered to his hip. Malcolm slapped at Trayvon's hand before he could remove the pistol from its holster. "You don't scare me, nigga," Forrest defiantly said. "Killing me ain't going to do nothing but make life harder for you. But seeing your white ass hanging from a tree is going to do wonders to our egos," Trayvon replied as he used his gloved hand to wipe the spit away. After that, the 4 blackout agents at the other end of the rope pulled, bringing Forrest to his feet. Trayvon grabbed Forrest by his collar to pull him close. "You're going to burn in hell for what you have done." He then returned the favor, spitting in Forrest's face. When Trayvon turned to walk away from the carnage, the 4 blackout agents pulled at the rope once more, lifting the bastard off the ground by his neck. Frantic movements at first, but Forrest's body went limp after his neck snapped. I smiled. Kyle Schuler was next. Chapter 19, Jonathan Frazier. When I stepped from the tunnel to the gate, I was engulfed by a swarm of people rushing to either catch their departing flights or exit Los Angeles' International Airport. "Sorry, sir," a burly white man exclaimed, fighting to regain his balance after colliding with me. All I could do was nod at him, clench my carry-on bag a little tighter, and keep it moving. I had come to Los Angeles to attend President Newsom's campaign fundraising event in Beverly Hills. Some of the biggest names in Hollywood were scheduled to attend. Spielberg, Hanks, and Weinstein immediately came to mind. But the guest list also included musicians Jay-Z and his wife Beyonce, as well as actors Forrest Whitaker, Jamie Foxx, and Kerry Washington. I even think invitations were sent to Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte. I had hoped Halle Berry would be in the crowd. I just wanted to get a glimpse of her and not shake her hand for being so well. Fine. To this day, I'm amazed at how quiet Black entertainers and athletes are about the issues of the day. You mentioned income inequality, and most of them cringe. They would much rather be talking about something else, as if the federal government was going to pass legislation that robbed them of the right to cash in on their celebrity. But the ones I just mentioned know what's up. They know that income inequality exists, that it's more pronounced in communities of color. And it is this knowledge that motivates many of them to use their celebrity to draw attention to a host of social and economic issues. These heroes and sheroes didn't fear retribution from the entertainment moguls because they knew they were being used by them to persuade members of their race to part with their dollars. When the Super Shuttle pulled up to the Hilton Regency Hotel on Century Boulevard, the concierge asked if I needed help with my luggage. I told him no, and then walked toward and through the sliding glass doors, my luggage in tow. Standing in the lobby, I made note of the people with name badges dangling from their necks, probably a writers' conference that I undoubtedly would have been interested in attending. I shuffled to my right and walked over to the guest registration desk. "Frazier, Jonathan Frazier," I told the Hispanic female standing behind the counter. "Here for one night." "Yes, sir," she responded. "Welcome to LA." She then proceeded to place my room information on 2 key cards before reaching over the counter to hand them to me. "Thank you," I said, taking them from her. "No problem, sir. Enjoy your stay." I made my way to the elevator, but before I could hang a left, the same desk attendant cried out to me. I turned to see her walking toward me with a sealed number 10 envelope in hand. "I'm sorry for delaying you, sir," she said, "but this letter was left for you early this morning." I accepted a letter from her. Nothing special about it, just my name written in cursive and black ink on the front. "Thank you." After I got situated in my room, I removed the letter from its envelope. It was blank. My first thought was someone was playing a joke on me. President Newsom knew me from my work with the Post, but he didn't know where I was staying. I started to toss it. But then I remembered that what Mr. Black had told me, that President Newsom would be reaching out to me when I arrived. Didn't know how or when, It was then that I took a second look at the blank sheet of paper. The longer I stared at it, the louder the soft humming in my head became. Once invisible lettering and numbers became visible. A003. Hello, Jonathan. I turned to see President Newsom's hologram standing in the space between my bed and flat screen television. Hello, Mr. President. Glad to see you made it. How was your flight out of Washington? Clear all day, yours? Horrible. Hit turbulence the whole way, but we made it here in one piece. Been on the move ever since. 2 fundraising events in one day. And you're doing it again in the morning? Yes, sir. After that, I'm headed to Iowa before returning to Washington, Marjorie and the kids. President Newsom's wife was the former Marjorie Eubanks, a power broker in her own right. 3 years before her husband became the American president, she was the president and CEO of the United Way of Greater Chicago. A graduate of the Harvard School of Business, Marjorie Eubanks Newsom was considered a friend to the nonprofit community, someone who commanded equal respect from the rich and not so rich. But she turned her back on the 6-figure salary that the United Way had been paying her to support her husband's 2008 presidential bid. After he won, the media fawned all over her. They also predicted she would set a new standard for what it meant to be a sitting first lady. President Newsom's hologram now stood in the hallway. Congratulations on completing your training, the hologram exclaimed as it walked to the living room. Cornelius said you have questions about Adinkrahene's future. Come. It extended its arm to the love seat to my right. Sit with me. I may have some of the answers you seek. So I ran for president because I thought it was the best play for restoring what Mr. Douglas called the Pangean nation. It's not enough to just be the president of Black America or a diverse coalition of Americans even. My aim has always been to be a unifier, not a polarizer. 30 minutes into our conversation, I found myself standing, sipping from a water bottle as President Newsom's hologram sat in the recliner across from me with his legs crossed. One of the first questions I posed pertained to Adinkrahene's Afrocentric focus. While I admitted the fact that Adinkrahene was committed to restoring the Pangean nation, I was saddened by the fact that Hispanics, Asians, Native Americans, Jews, and Caucasians had yet to be invited to the party. I explained that many of my white friends at Living Water were more enlightened about the adverse effects of racial politics than some of the Black and brown people I knew. President Newsom's hologram said similar rumblings could be heard when he was Adinkrahene's supreme commander, but he asserted that syndicate integration was impossible. The slipstream disk can only be coded to humans of African descent. He added that the syndicate's agents would probably be opposed to this idea anyway. Anglo-controlled corporations had too much influence over American politics, domestic and foreign affairs. Because these corporations had been running roughshod over the citizenry for centuries, and it would take more than government-led civil rights legislation and integrated public facilities to encourage unenlightened white Americans to give the darker-skinned groups their fair share of the nation's prosperity. They needed to see more Blacks pursuing academic and vocational excellence. They needed to see more Black teenagers being attentive in school classrooms rather than running wild in the streets. More than anything, they needed to recognize the bad hand that they had dealt African Americans and how their unwillingness to talk about it just made life worse for everyone. What are your thoughts about the Citizens United decision? I asked. A big mistake. The hologram uncrossed its legs and leaned forward. But that's what happens when you have a long-standing tradition of being controlled by the Satirian empire. Morality is thrown out the window. Now the voices of corporate executives and millionaires are more audible than the voices of middle and working class Americans. I watched as the hologram reached out to grab something that I couldn't see, a mug perhaps, and sip. The hand of the Satirian-controlled cabal is in everything. It is long recognized that an increasing number of Earth's citizens are for diversity, not against it. Within the next 15 to 30 years, Hispanics will be in the majority. Once this happened, the political party that co-opted the Republican Party will be hard-pressed to win another presidential election. That's why they're fighting so hard in these local and state elections. If they can hold on to their governorships in the South and Midwest, they will be able to change the electoral maps through gerrymandering, so Republican candidates will always be winners, not losers. But you're the president of the United States. Isn't there something you can do to draw attention to what they're doing? No, there isn't. Not if I want to continue being everyone's president. It's up to the people. It's up to the people now. They must speak a little louder, share their experiences with anyone who will listen. We live in a democracy. We must stay that way. For a brief moment, we sat and stood there in silence. I didn't know what he was thinking, but I thought about the corporate cabal's ongoing demonization of Hispanics. Leading up to the 2010 midterm elections, Hispanics were what some pundits call the new black. The cabal convinced the Republican Party's mostly white base that illegal immigrants had been registering and voting in local, state, and national elections for years. Voter fraud, they screamed from the rooftops. The lie was so persistent that even independent voters opted to vote for Republican candidates. When all was said and done, the Republican Party had seized control of the House of Representatives, while the Democratic Party had held on to the Senate. President Newsom's hologram continued. What you need to understand, Jonathan, is there's the sphere of a black planet on both sides of the color line. Whites fear blacks because they know what happens when you hurt someone, a group of people. They fear if we ever receive even an ounce of power, influence, we would respond negatively, seek revenge against white Americans for feelings hurt, lives lost. But we blacks also internalize this fear. Rather than collectively pursue excellence in all that we do, we buy into the white lie that we're second-class citizens, inferior, unsuited for more prosperous living. Its index finger bounced from me to itself and back again. We get it, though. You and I mean. We understand that all men are created equal. It is an idea that we believe in and work to make real, not just in this country, but in other countries as well. Our challenge is getting the buy-in we need to eradicate prejudice, discrimination, and racism. We must dispel this myth among conservatives and moderates that America has seen its best days. I flicked at the bridge of my nose as I returned to the love seat. Mr. Black says Adinkrahene helped you become president. How? I and almost everyone in the presidential press pool thought Senator McShane out of Arizona was a shoo-in, and he should have been, but the GOP underestimated the American people. While all this talk about multi-billionaires being job creators, energized members of their base, the fact that corporations were being counted as people infuriated everyone else. Couple that with Adinkrahene's underground messaging to blacks, and you had the makings of a winning campaign. Underground messaging? You mean Facebook, Twitter? No, undetectable text and email. You know how we roll, brother. We both chuckled at that. I started to ask him how the syndicate was able to identify African American and African cell phone users, but then I just shrugged my shoulders and accepted the fact that nothing was impossible for the technologically savvy Cornelius Black. When you're able to discreetly siphon off $14 trillion from international corporations and governments without raising the slightest suspicion from city, county, state, and federal law enforcement officials, hijacking cell phones must have been a piece of cake. What are your thoughts about Kyle Schuler? I asked. I watched as President Newsom's hologram inhaled deeply and then flopped back in the recliner. He's going to be a tough one to beat, it replied, but he has ties to Mayor Chase, or the man your own paper dubbed Mr. 47%. Chase is going to be a liability for him. Most of his financial support will come from the Bain brothers out of Texas and Sheldon Richardson out of Nevada. The cabal takes care of its own. How will you win re-election then? By believing in the American people. They know what's going on, and those individuals who don't like it are in the majority. But the thing I fear the most is these new voter suppression laws in Texas, Florida, North Carolina, and Ohio. They could potentially dissuade people from turning out next November. Did he kill Mary Giles? Yes, he did. I read the intelligence report. Will you be able to debate him with a straight face, knowing what you know? That's the plan. I just need Adinkrahene to set the table for me. Start floating rumors about his indiscretions and crimes. Get a confession out of him. A slight pause then. What did you think about reading Douglas's letter? Hard to believe at first, I replied with a sigh, but it puts things into perspective. Just wish they were easier to detect. The Satirians have corrupted our culture, Jonathan. People have a hard time distinguishing right from wrong. But you see what's happening now, don't you? Now that I'm the American president, leader of the free world. Yes, sir, I do. They reject every bill that Democratic legislators and I propose, all because they think the federal government should have a limited role in people's affairs. They ignore the fact that all my proposals were initially proposed by members of their own party, even parts of the Affordable Care Act. How do they get away with doing that? Political suicide, if you ask me. I agree. But the Satirians' control over cabal leaders is strong. As long as they can appeal to the white majority's racial resentments, they will always be competitive in local and national elections. By demonizing democratically elected progressives and their fair-minded policies, they add more fuel to an already out-of-control fire. Selena's not helping matters, is she? No, she's not. The plan is for the syndicate to one day reveal itself to the citizenry. Let them know about the Satirian plot to rule humanity with iron fists. But Selena's quest to dole out vengeance on one man, Kyle Schuler, is going to weaken our appeal. The syndicate will be viewed as a black supremacy group, and either I or my Republican successor will be forced to disempower it through use of military force. Would you give such an order? Of course not. If anything, I would give Cornelius an opportunity to offer up an explanation during a press conference or some other forum. I can't say the same about my Republican counterpart. President Newsom's hologram stood. I have to get some shut-eye, my friend. See you at the breakfast. Yes, sir. Promise me one thing, though. What's that? That you won't pass me over when my hand goes up during the Q&A. You have my word, Agent A100. He turned to walk away. Adinkrahene, he exclaimed before thumping his chest with a balled up right fist. I mimicked his gesture. Adinkrahene. I blinked once and then watched as President Newsom's hologram dissolve right before my eyes. All right, so those are the most recent three chapters, chapters 17, 18, and 19 of Adinkrahene, Fear of a Black Planet. And we'll be reading chapter 20 next time, and this will be told from the perspective of Jonathan Frazier. So there was a lot of stuff packed in those three chapters, and I'm hoping you guys are getting a better sense of what I'm trying to say in this book. I mean, there are a lot of things that have gone on politically, in our culture currently that really, and really all I'm stating in the book is I'm pulling from current events, that have already happened. And in some respects, I use real names. In some respects, I use other people's names. But the thing that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kind of let you know when Black people are given a power, how they're using it. And the Adinkrahene Syndicate, they're not all about Black supremacy or anything like that. They're about rebuilding the Pangean nation, which is a nation of equals as it relates to the people that live on the planet. And that's why, I'm really looking forward to writing the next two books. Like I said, Adinkrahene, Fear of a Beloved Community, And that title really comes from one of Dr. King's speeches where he talks about the beloved community of equals. And that's really what we need to get back to. And that's what I'm trying to get at the book. And when I write book 2, it will say a lot about this beloved community as it relates to us being in conflict with the Satyrian Empire, which is they're rallying their forces to invade the planet Earth, which is occupied by us humans. So when we get to book 3, which is Adinkrahene, fear of an alien presence, you'll see what it's all about. It's all about us, really getting prepared for an attack from the Satyrians. So I'm trying to set it up in a way that, is appealing to readers and pulls people in. I mean, it's not Star Wars, it's not Star Trek, but it is an alternate telling of what the future may hold for humanity. And I also want to get into a lot more biblical things. I know I use some, I'm not one to, cuss or use foul language, but, in my book, I just wanted to, really make it realistic. And when my characters speak, I want to make sure that they speak like normal people would speak. So sometimes you do have to put some of that in your story just to make it realistic. And that's what I endeavored to do, in the book. And then there are other situations where that may not, really bode well for a member of the Adinkrahene syndicate, because their powers originate from the Garden of Eden, which was where the first man and woman were created, where they were born. And that's Adam and Eve. So I do use a lot of biblical themes in the book. And I also want to let you guys understand that the Adinkrahene syndicate is built off of righteousness as opposed to unrighteousness. And the powers, if they're derived from God, there has to be a moral code that these agents have to adhere to in the eyes of the man upstairs. So, we'll talk more about that. And those are things that I'm fleshing out as a writer, because, I'm even thinking about, okay, when we think about death, and think about life, think about, look at a butterfly, how the butterfly changes from a caterpillar, goes into a cocoon, and emerges as a butterfly. Okay, what if that same process was something that human beings go through when you grow old and you live a full life and you die, but then you're in this cocoon and then you're reborn. And I'm not talking reincarnation. I'm talking about reborn, because as we know, the universe expands, it's ever expanding. So what if that is God's way of letting us know that he's making way for people who have passed on from this life to the next? So those are concepts that I want to explore, because a lot of times we sit back and we watch a Star Wars and a Star Trek and we think that space is where other beings live. And humanity has been on this planet for centuries, and no one has visited us from these other planets. And maybe they don't have the technology to get to us, but at the same time, it's like, if we are the apple of God's eye, what if this universe is all about making room for humanity, after they pass from life to eternal life? And maybe space represents eternal life. I don't know. But that's a concept that I want to really kind of spell out in the book. Where I want to let people know that, in my mind, the theory that I'm thinking is that, there are not any aliens out there. What's out there are loved ones that we will one day see again. That's heaven. So that's me thinking out loud. But that's all I have for today. I mean, I appreciate you guys, the ones that have stopped by to check out my videos. I really appreciate your support. I'd even appreciate your support even more if you purchase uh, this book. You can go to my website, www.jafalkerson.wordpress.com/store. You can actually see all the products that I have available for purchase on there. But since I'm reading Adinkrahene, Fear of a Black Planet right now, I would encourage you to go to my website to make a purchase of the book, because I am. If I had a T-shirt on right now, the T-shirt would read, "I am Black Wall Street." And if I am Black Wall Street, that means that you, not just I'm speaking mainly to Black consumers, but I'm also speaking to anybody who's watching this video. If I'm Black Wall Street and you're a Black consumer, my expectation would be that you would support Black Wall Street, because we have to support each other in order for us to continue to be creative and do the things that we need to do to, I guess, show them who we are. And that's really where my mind is, or what I think about on a daily basis is how can we support each other, especially as it relates to entrepreneurship, and just stepping out of that comfort zone, stepping out of that box and doing the things that you need to do to, pursue your passions, do the things that you want to do to enrich the world or enlighten people. As you see in my intro video, it's all about entertaining, educating, and enlightening. And that's the mission that I'm on right now. But I cannot do that if I don't have support of you, my readers. So these videos are all about trying to build an audience, for my product and also my service. So, and I am an entrepreneur and I am Black Wall Street. So I just really ask that you will, visit my website and really support my efforts. But that's all I have for today. Thank you again for dropping by for another episode of Culturally Coded Book Talks, where an open book teaches valuable lessons about life, liberty, and happiness. Until next time, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Holidays. Take care.